Silent grief, the kind that lives in empty rooms and unanswered phone calls. Have you ever lost everyone who mattered? Have you ever survived something that killed the people you loved most? Rebecca Martinez thought the worst was behind her when she buried her parents and twin sister. She thought grief was her only enemy, but sometimes the real fight begins after the funeral ends. This is the story of a woman who lost everything twice. Once to a virus, once to the people who were supposed to protect her in her darkest hour. If you're watching this alone, feeling forgotten by a world that moved on without you, you're not alone. Subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We see you, we hear you, and this story is for you. Behind every story is a real person, someone who shared your pain. We've changed names and locations to protect identities, but what you're about to hear really happened. The alarm screams at 5 in the morning, just like it has every day for the past 2 years. Rebecca Martinez reaches across the king-size bed that once felt cozy, now an ocean of cold sheets and silence. Her hand finds the pill bottle before her eyes even open. Sertraline, 50 milligrams, the little white promise that today might hurt just a little less than yesterday. The house groans around her as she shuffles to the kitchen, floorboards creaking under feet that have learned to walk quietly, as if making noise might disturb the ghosts that live in every corner. The coffee maker gurgles to life, brewing enough for one. Always for one now. But muscle memory betrays her, and she finds herself reaching for 4 mugs before catching herself, the familiar stab of loss piercing through the morning fog. "Good morning, Sophia," she whispers to the empty chair across from her, the one with the faded floral cushion that still smells faintly of her twin sister's perfume. "Mom's making pancakes today. Dad's reading the sports section out loud again. You know how he gets during baseball season." The silence swallows her words, but Rebecca continues the conversation anyway, because stopping means accepting that they're really gone, and acceptance feels like betrayal. 2 years after the funeral, Rebecca finally discovers the truth. During an emergency medical consultation after collapsing in therapy, Dr. Amanda Foster reviews test results that reveal a shocking reality. "Rebecca, your antibody levels suggest you've had COVID. When was the last time you had the disease?" "I didn't have COVID," Rebecca responds automatically. "I was careful, masked, vaccinated, the whole thing." Think back. Any illness in the past 2 years, even something mild? The memory hits like a physical blow. February 22nd, 2022, 1 week after the funeral. Rebecca had felt run down, attributed it to grief and exhaustion, a scratchy throat, mild fever, fatigue that she'd assumed was her body's way of processing loss. "After the funeral," she whispers, "I felt sick for a week, but I thought it was just everything." Rebecca, I believe you've been living with long COVID for 2 years. The symptoms you're describing, the brain fog, fatigue, heart irregularities, they're all consistent with post-viral syndrome. The discovery leads Rebecca to Marcus, a man who lost his wife and 2 children in 2021 and developed long COVID at the memorial service. Together, they uncover an even more devastating truth. James Patterson, director of Peaceful Rest Funeral Home, tested positive for COVID 3 days before Rebecca's family funeral, but conducted the service anyway. "That bastard killed your family twice," Marcus says with anger, "once through negligence and once through greed, and he infected 23 other people in the process, including you." The investigation reveals a pattern of negligence. 12 other people from the funeral were diagnosed with long COVID. 3 are in psychiatric facilities being treated for grief-induced psychosis when they're actually suffering from virus-induced neurological damage. The trial becomes a battle not just for justice, but for recognition that long COVID is a real medical condition, not a psychiatric problem. Patterson's lawyers attack Rebecca's credibility, questioning her psychiatric hospitalization and her hallucinations. "Sir, I know the difference between my sister's voice in my memory and her voice in my hallucinations. I know the difference between missing my family and being sick because of a virus. And I know the difference between grief and negligence." Her 3-hour testimony details not just the loss of her family, but the 2 years of thinking she was going insane when she was actually fighting a disease she didn't know she had. When Patterson finally testifies, he breaks down, reading his own emails that show he prioritized profit over safety. "The Martinez service is our biggest this month. I'll handle it personally and keep my distance as much as possible. Can't afford to cancel. We're already behind the mortgage." The jury deliberates for only 4 hours before finding Patterson guilty of negligent endangerment, conspiracy to commit fraud, and violation of public health orders. The civil settlement results in $8 million divided among 34 families, but the money isn't what matters to Rebecca. What matters is the legislation that passes 6 months after the trial, Sophia's Law, requiring funeral homes to disclose COVID exposures and implement strict safety protocols. What matters is the long COVID clinic that opens at Denver General, funded by the settlement and staffed by doctors who understand that neurological symptoms aren't always psychiatric problems. Rebecca's own healing is slow and complicated. The long COVID symptoms improve with treatment but don't disappear. She learns to work with her limitations, taking a part-time consulting job that allows her to work from home on good days and rest on bad days. The conversations with Sophia become less frequent but more meaningful. Instead of desperate attempts to bring the dead back to life, they become moments of connection with memories that feel sacred rather than haunting. 3 years after the trial, Rebecca runs the Rebecca Martinez Family Memorial Center, where 23 people share their stories of loss, illness, and recovery. Marcus is there, fully recovered, and working as a peer counselor. Mrs. Chen brings homemade soup. Dr. Foster volunteers her time. Recovery isn't about going back to who you were before. It's about becoming who you're meant to be after everything you've survived. That night, Rebecca writes in her journal, "I learned something today. Love doesn't end with death, it transforms. You live on not in my grief, but in every life I touch, every tear I dry, every survivor I help find their way back to the light." Outside her window, the garden grows in the darkness, roots reaching deep into soil that has known both death and renewal. Inside the house, Rebecca sleeps peacefully for the first time in years, no longer haunted by voices, but comforted by the knowledge that love, like energy, can neither be created nor destroyed, only transformed into something new, beautiful, and lasting. The pandemic had taken everything from her, but in losing it all, she had found herself. And in finding herself, she had found her purpose, to be a light for others walking through their own darkness, proof that survival is possible, that healing is real, and sometimes the greatest victory isn't returning to who you were, it's becoming who you were always meant to be. If you're listening to this story in the darkness of your own loss, if you're fighting battles that no one else can see, if you're wondering whether survival is worth the pain it costs, let Rebecca's journey remind you of something important. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not imagining your suffering. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't moving on, it's staying present with your pain long enough to transform it into something that can heal not just yourself, but others who are walking the same difficult path. You are not alone. Your healing is always possible.